Hey guys, it's been a while and I deeply apologize for that. I am going to attempt to start recording a lot more than just every 3 to 4 months. I am going to start doing what I had initially planned on doing with this channel and doing book reviews. For a little bit there, I was contemplating on Stephen King because he's one of my favorite authors. But right now, the Stephen King book that I'm on was a little, okay, way too heavy for me emotionally. And so I decided instead I would get back into an old fantasy series that I loved when I was 18. And mind you, before I say what series this is, I loved it even though I knew it was stupid. It was a guilty pleasure series that I knew just doesn't do any good for you mentally because it doesn't like challenge you in any way. But it's fun, it's silly, and you know what? It's got excitement in it. Who doesn't love that? But this series is called the Mercy Thompson series by Patricia Briggs. There we go. And the first of the series is called Moon Called. And right now, currently, it is still an ongoing series. There are 12 novels and like two or three graphic novels that have been adaptations for this series. And it started being published in 2006, I think. And I actually started reading it when I was 18 back in 2010. So by the time I had gotten into the series, there were already four novels out, which I devoured pretty quickly. So by the time the fifth novel was coming out, I was just not so patiently waiting for it. So anyway, I am going to review this series in its entirety until the 12th novel, I think. Right now, I only have 9 of the novels because after a couple of years, I just sort of fell off of it because it started getting plain old, as a lot of supernatural fictions tend to be. But I mean, I reread this after sitting it down for like 4 or 5 years, and I felt a lot of nostalgia for it. So I decided to get back into it, and it's enough for me to go ahead and do a review for. So I'm gonna review one book at a time instead of the series as a whole, starting with Moon Called. Now, Moon Called is basically a novel about a shape shifting woman in her late 20s, and she's half Native American, half white American, born of a possibly shape shifting coyote father who was Native American and a white American, completely human mother. Uh, you find out pretty quickly that her father died of a tragic car accident only a couple of days after her conception. And her mother was only like 16 or 17, which honestly is really problematic and gross, but they don't really dwell on it in the series. So, her mother basically did what she could to raise her until she finds out that her toddler toddler is a shapeshifter, which she had no idea was even a thing, being a human. So Mercy was taken to be raised by a pack of werewolves. Now, in the series, there are a plethora of mythological creatures, obviously. She, as the main character, is a shapeshifter coming from Native American lore and legend, and a lot of the people around her, including her hot neighbor, are all werewolves. She was raised by a werewolf. She's surrounded by werewolves no matter where she seems to go. She also, being a mechanic, fixes cars for vampires, one of which is a Scooby-Doo loving nut job who is kind of a blast to be around when you read about him. And he's like one of the few vampires that treats Mercy like a individual who isn't food. There are also a lot of fae folk in this series. Now, the world building in the novel is very rushed because Patricia Briggs obviously meant for this to be a series. So she just kind of had Mercy talking in her head over and over about how, yeah, the fae are around and there's werewolves and there's vampires. But for right now, in this world, only the fae are being outed because as the government is getting better technology and as modern medication is getting better and this, that, the other, forensic sciences is getting a lot better, the fae, the werewolves, and soon to be the vampires are all basically a not so hidden secret. So after a while, the Grey Lords, basically think of them as royalty of the fae folk, start pushing out a lot of their fae folk out into the open, especially the more lovable, cutesy ones and a lot of the weaker ones, because they don't want the humans freaking out and starting a war just because they see these giant, ugly, very, very powerful beings. And by the end of the first novel, you come to find out that the werewolves are planning on outing themselves as well, but in a different way from the Fae. Something that is beneficial for the whole of the werewolf kind, while not pushing them out in a blatantly terrible way like the Fae did. But anyway, in the beginning of this novel, Mercy is working on a car when she is interrupted by a young teenager, a boy, who is a runaway and homeless, and who also happens to be a werewolf. He asks for a job, and even though she knows and smells him as a werewolf, she can tell that he needs help. And so far, she's realizing really quickly that he doesn't realize what she is, nor is he indicating any realization of what she is. So she says, okay, go have some food out of my fridge, come back with some fresh clothes that I have in the back of the shop. You and I will work for the day. You'll get paid for the day, and then we'll see what happens from there. And so all that happens, nothing becomes an issue. They have a little bit of talk here and there, and she gets a name out of him. And she specifically words it as, "What do you want me to call you?" Because she's afraid of forcing him to have to lie to her. Because she sees that he's a runaway, she sees that he's a werewolf. She doesn't want him in a position where, because of what he is, he would need to lie to her. So she words herself very carefully when she asks him questions like it's exactly what I said. What should I call you? Not what is your name? So he introduces himself as Mac. And after that, they leave the shop at the end of the day with no problems whatsoever. Over the weekend, she goes about her business, does her own thing, has conversations with her mom over the phone, and talks about her how do you make hot werewolf neighbor who is the alpha werewolf of the pack that lives in her Tri-City area. And later on a Monday, she goes back to her shop and starts working, wondering where this Mac kid is, wondering if he's okay, did he move on, has he gotten in trouble. Then all of a sudden, about halfway through her shift, he comes around and he's like, "I'm sorry, can I come back and work for a few days?" She immediately lets him in. So once again, they do their thing. They work together in the mechanic shop. And then at the end of the shift, she does the same old, gives him a little money, and goes about her business and goes home. Deciding, okay, this time I'm gonna buy that boy a blanket, gonna buy him some food, and I'm going to unlock one of the cars outside of my garage in order for him to like have a place to stay, because he still doesn't know that she's a coyote and she wants to keep it that way. And she's worried that because her neighbor is a werewolf and because she smells like a coyote, she can't bring him to her own home. So she compromises and says, all right, but at least I'll give him some sort of shelter. It's not exactly what he needs, but it'll be something. So she's doing that, and she decides before she goes back to the shop to drop off things that she needed to go to the grocery store. So she does that. She stops at the shop and realizes that Mac is already there, but with another werewolf and a human. And this other werewolf and human are trying to force him into a van. And he starts arguing with them, saying, no, I can't do the cages anymore. I can't do the drugs anymore. You guys almost killed me when I first turned. This, that, the other. So she starts freaking out on the inside and being like, okay, something's really fucked up here. I need to help this kid. There's no way they're taking this kid. So while they're distracted, fighting amongst each other, or at least arguing amongst each other, she shifts into her coyote form, jumps on top of the van that they're beside, and jumps the werewolf and bites him right in the jugular. Now, mind you, when she does this, she knows that werewolves are incredibly powerful and very fast at healing. So in her mind, the way she planned this was, I'll attack him, I'll get to the jugular, it will not kill him, but it will slow him down just enough for me to get away and just enough time for him to chase me so that I could get him away from Mac. Well, it kind of works. That werewolf, halfway through chasing her, ends up dead entirely. He doesn't staunch his blood flow. He doesn't heal immediately like he's supposed to. He acts like a completely new werewolf who has no idea what he's doing and no idea what power he holds. So unfortunately, he just bleeds out and dies right in her parking lot of her mechanic shop. And when this happens, the human that had been with the werewolf immediately peels out in their SUV and just is gone. So Mercy and Mac take the dead werewolf's body and moves it into her garage. She immediately calls up her neighbor, the pack alpha, Adam Houghton? I'm gonna call him Houghton. And tells him, there's a dead werewolf in my garage, I killed him, and he immediately hangs up. Which obviously probably freaked him the hell out and brought him running to her garage, along with a witch who he uses, and as some werewolves in his pack have to use for a cleanup committee. In this series, it seems like a lot of werewolves use witches as their cleanup crew in order to get rid of a lot of the blood and a lot of the bodies and a lot of the tracks that werewolves leave. Because werewolves are very vicious beasts, but they're also very cunning. They're very silent, they're very deadly, and they don't want to be outed yet. They do not want to be hunted by people like how their ancestors were, back when people believed in werewolves, vampires, and witches. So they bring a witch over, she starts cleaning everything up, and then Adam, the pack alpha of the Tri-Cities, comes up to her and is like, what the heck did you do? Who is this dead werewolf? Why did you kill him? How did you kill him? And who is this werewolf that you have beside you about to freak out? And at this point, Mac is having issues controlling his werewolf side because he is by the body that is bloody. It is fresh meat to him. And he has no idea how to control himself because he's a new werewolf who has never been taught a thing. So Adam takes over as the pack alpha over Mac and gets him to his house safely. And that's basically the end of that scene for a while. The next day, Mercy wakes up at her home, tries to get out her front door, and realizes as she's opening her door that Mac's dead body is laying there bleeding across her trailer porch. And as she closes the front door, comes around through the back door and looks at the body on the porch, a van peels out immediately away from her property. She looks up to where her neighbor lives, Adam, and doesn't see anything. All of his lights are on. Everything is on, but there are no cars at all. His entire pack is gone. So she goes over there, and as she's getting onto the back porch of his home, she starts hearing werewolf growling, and she starts explaining to the reader that werewolves are very silent, that they do what they can to when they're fighting and having hunting, that they're so quiet that humans cannot detect them. So something's going on, that she can hear growling and she can hear furniture busting in that house. So she gets one of her guns and goes through his front, comes around, goes through his front door, and walks into a trash heap. His entire home is completely and utterly trash. Furniture's thrown everywhere. There's scratches and dents in the walls. And there lies Adam, half dead, with his organs being spilled out from his stomach while he's fighting an werewolf. Mercy shoots down the werewolf and somehow manages to kill him with silver bullets before she tries to help Adam, and before she remembers that Adam's daughter, who is a human, is still probably upstairs in his home. So she goes up there in her coyote form to try to find the daughter, and comes to find out the daughter is missing. The daughter has been kidnapped by whoever attacked Adam and killed Mac. And so Mercy goes back downstairs, tries to help Adam, decides that she needs to call his pack. Someone needs to help her. And then all of a sudden, right as she's calling his second in command, Daryl, she gets a thought. What if one of his packmates was behind this? Because in her mind, isn't it a little too convenient that he was attacked while his pack was gone from his home? Wasn't it a little too convenient that he was basically alone with a novice werewolf when something like this went down? So she decides, I can't trust his pack. I don't know his pack. I only know a couple of them. And even then, I can't trust them as far as I could throw them. So she puts Adam in in one of her vans and drives him all the way up to Minnesota in the mountains, where her old pack, who raised her, the pack of Bran, the Marok, or the leader of all of the packs of the North American unit, lives. Basically, her plan is take Adam up there, allow him the days that he needs to recuperate, allow him the time that he needs to heal up his broken bones and his wounds and the huge gut gash. And then after that, once he's strong enough, go back down to the Tri-Cities and then figure out what's happening and get his daughter back. So, That's exactly what she does. She drives up to Minnesota, finds the old pack that she had lived with, and explains to them the situation of what's going on. So Bran, the pack Marok, and his son, one of his sons, Samuel, immediately decide to help her and immediately decide to help Adam. Samuel is an interesting story because back when Mercy was a young girl and a teenager, mind you, Sam wanted to marry her, and not for love and not for loyalty. He wanted to marry her because she was a good candidate to mate, to breed children that wouldn't die. Because in this universe, werewolves who breed with human women, the human women tend to die pretty quickly with childbirth, or their children tend to die fairly quickly in infancy or otherwise, because the bloodlines between a werewolf and a human just doesn't mix very well. So the children don't come out malformed, but there's something wrong with them to where they do not live hardly long at all. And in this series, in this world, female werewolves cannot breed. They can have children, but the change of every full moon is inevitable. All werewolves are able to change as they wish and as they please, but the change of the moonlight, the full moon, is inevitable no matter what you do. And because the change is so violent to the body, the fetuses within the mothers always die. Bran, the Marok of the North American packs, he has 3 sons, 2 of which were born human by human women and somehow managed to survive long enough to grow into adulthood. And then he turned them into werewolves, which is a very, very painful, dangerous process that most do not survive. Samuel is his oldest, and he was born a werewolf under very strange, very rare circumstances. And Samuel, knowing how breeding amongst werewolves and humans and werewolves works, realizes that Mercy might be, because she is a shapeshifter and not one or the other, might be able to breed healthy, strong children who could be human, who could be a werewolf, or could be shapeshifter. But either way, they will and can survive. And at that point in time, Mercy's only 16, and this guy, she doesn't know it yet, but this guy is a couple hundred years old, which is very, very gross. But even when she's 16 and she doesn't actually know his age, but thinks of him as like a mid-20s or a late 20-something-year-old, she can't handle the fact that he doesn't love her. He just wants her as a breeding vessel. So she leaves. And that's how she eventually came to the Tri-Cities years and years later. But Samuel comes back into her life by helping her get Adam fixed and get Adam healed. And he follows her and Adam back to the Tri-Cities in order to help figure out what is going on, why werewolves are dying, and why Adam's daughter was kidnapped. Alright, so I've been spending way too much time talking about the first 50 to 100 page of this novel, and it's just around 300 pages. But that's a lot of what is really going on. You come to find out that there is a plot to take over Bran's position of Marok to Adam, which Adam has no idea about this plot. But a bunch of werewolves in the North American packs, specifically a lot of rogue werewolves, are making deals with other pack alphas to change humans into new werewolves, to create an army to go against the Marok, and to have either Bran kill Adam or Adam kill Bran, or or both die. But either way, the whole plot was to stop the Marok from outing the werewolves to the humans, like how the Grey Lords outed the entire face species to the humans. But all in all, they eventually are able to find Adam's daughter, and Adam and his pack, now that he has healed, go after these other werewolves who took her and who are in this plot to get him to fight the Morok. And he actually ends up getting captured and stuffed full of drugs laced with silver nitrate in order for the drugs to stay in his body and to keep him weak. So it ends up that Mercy has to side with Samuel, a couple of the werewolves in Adam's pack, and an old nemesis, an old friend of Adam's, who was also turned into a werewolf the same time Adam was back in Vietnam. She sides with that guy, his grandsons, and of course a few of the pack members that Adam had, in order to get Adam and his daughter back and to get rid of all these werewolves who are plotting against the Marok. Thankfully, that goes off pretty well, with very few to no casualties on the side of the good guys, while all the other bad guys are completely and utterly destroyed. And you find out that one of the witches that was working with Adam's pack as a cleanup crew was helping the other werewolves to do all this stuff in order to keep the werewolves in secret, because the witches, they're profiting off of cleanup crew for the werewolves, because as long as the werewolves are secret and as long as the werewolves do dumb stuff like accidentally kill people or get into stupid fights with each other and kill each other, those witches, they're getting money and a lot of it. So that's why one of the witches ends up betraying Adam and his whole pack in order to have the werewolves staying in secret. But yeah, that is the entirety of the first book, Mooncalled. I still enjoy it, even though I fully disagree with a lot of the problematic pedophilia that was involved, and the fact that you're getting like little hints of a love triangle coming up for later on in the series between Mercy, Adam, and Samuel, because Mercy is just surrounded by these hottie hot vampires with chiseled abs and tight shirts. She can't stand it that they're all so hot and so cool. So even though she's a badass, she somehow starts falling in love, especially with Samuel and Adam, and it's kind of really gross when you remember her and Samuel's backstory. But anyway, I digress. That was Mooncalled, and hopefully later on, here in a week or two, I will be able to give you guys a review of the second novel. And yeah, that's about it. You guys have a good one. Bye.